Have you ever thought about starting a business from scratch only to get completely bogged down by the sheer risk of it failing? Well, what if there was a better way? What if, instead of building a company from the ground up, you just bought an existing, highly profitable business? Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we are unpacking the completely fascinating world of entrepreneurship through acquisition. We're going to explore a proven framework to help you evaluate the perfect target company to buy, and we'll rely on specific economic characteristics that can literally tilt the odds of success vastly in your favor.
Here is a quick roadmap for our explainer today. 1. The search fund model. 2. Evaluating the track. 3. Examining the horse. 4. The jockey and fit. And finally, 5. Synthesizing your selection.
Okay, part 1, the search fund model. To lay the groundwork here, we really need to understand the vehicle that's most often used for this, the search fund. In this model, an entrepreneur raises capital specifically to find, buy, and then step in to operate an existing business. But here is the absolutely crucial point. As investors and buyers, we're going to take a pretty contrary approach. You see, most budding entrepreneurs have a product idea and they desperately search for a market. We are doing the exact opposite. We actually don't care what the company does, as long as it's legal and legitimate, of course. We only care intensely about how it makes money. The economic underpinnings are everything.
And that brings us to a really brilliant framing concept from Stanford professor Irving Grousbeck. Think of the whole search fund journey like a race. The industry you choose to play in, well, that's the track. The specific business or asset you buy is the horse. And you, the entrepreneur and CEO, are the jockey. Let's break these down one by one, starting with the track.
Part 2, evaluating the track.
Let's look at the macro level first. There's this legendary quote from Warren Buffett that perfectly captures why the industry matters more than almost anything else. He says that when a brilliant management team tackles a business with bad economics, it's the reputation of the business that remains intact. In other words, you could be an absolute genius operator, but if you enter a terrible industry, the industry's going to win. Every time. We want an industry with universal tailwinds. We would vastly prefer to be an average business in an extraordinary, rapidly growing industry, rather than trying to be a brilliant standout in a shrinking one.
So what actually makes a great track? Generally speaking, business-to-business or B2B is highly preferred over business-to-consumer or B2C. Serving other businesses is usually just so much easier for a first-time entrepreneur. Why? Because businesses have highly predictable behavior patterns, right? They have consistent operating hours and very stable needs. Consumers, on the other hand, consumer tastes are fickle. They require you to constantly adapt, usually with really heavy, expensive marketing costs. B2B just offers that rock-solid stability a new CEO desperately needs.
But look, every track has its potholes, and you need to know exactly what to steer clear of. You absolutely want to avoid seasonality and cyclicality. Managing massive swings in cash flow and labor is basically like running a brand new mini startup every single season. It's exhausting. You also want to avoid industries that need ongoing research and development. You want a product that stays exactly the same, like renting out musical instruments, not unpredictable drug development. Watch out for reimbursement risk, too. That's where a stroke of a politician's pen can change your revenue rates overnight. And finally, avoid heavy vendor dependency. You never, ever want a single powerful supplier dictating your margins.
Now, eventually, you're going to want to sell this business, and that brings us to the exit path. You want an industry where strategic buyers are actively acquiring, not just financial buyers like private equity firms. Strategic buyers are existing companies in your industry who want to absorb your business for operational synergies. And because they can eliminate duplicate expenses, they usually pay a premium valuation. Having active strategic buyers in your industry is almost like having a safety net or a put option on your business. It's huge.
Part 3, examining the horse. Now that we've scoped out a nice, smooth track, it's time to zoom in and examine the specific asset you'll be writing. When you're analyzing a business, you have to realize that not all dollars are created equal. There are essentially 5 tiers of revenue, ranked from best to worst. At the very top, contractual recurring revenue. Think multi-year take-or-pay storage contracts, the absolute holy grail. Next is non-contractual recurring, like software subscriptions where the customer has to actively cancel. Then we have repeat revenue, where they keep coming back but have to initiate the purchase each time. Below that is actuarial revenue, which is predictable on a massive scale but with different customers each time, like graduation robe rentals. And at the very bottom is transactional revenue, like a supermarket, where every single sale is a brand new fight. You absolutely want to find a horse with highly recurring revenue. Once you find that great revenue model, what size business should you actually look to buy? Well, the Goldilocks zone for earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization, or EBITDA, as we usually call it, is $1 to $5 million. If it's less than $1 million, the business is just too small. It lacks infrastructure, and you're essentially just buying yourself a really stressful job. But if it's over $5 million, suddenly you are going to be competing in intense bidding wars against highly sophisticated, well-capitalized private equity firms. $1 to $5 million is just right.
Within that size range, you want healthy EBITDA margins falling strictly between 10 and 30%. If margins are below 10%, they are razor thin. That leaves a first-time CEO absolutely zero room for operational errors. But here is a super counterintuitive part. Anything over 30% is actually a major red flag. Margins that high almost always mean the previous owner has severely underinvested in the team, the software, or the infrastructure. Think about it. If you buy a fully optimized business with 40% margins, there's only one direction those margins can go under your leadership. And spoiler alert, it's down.
So, the really crucial point here is how well that margin translates to actual, cold hard cash in your bank account. You want a high conversion of EBITDA to free cash flow. The secret sauce here is something called negative working capital dynamics, which is really just a fancy way of saying your customers pay you upfront, but you get to pay your vendors much later. It's basically a free loan from your customers. Combine that with low capital expenditures, meaning you don't have to buy millions in heavy equipment just to maintain or grow the business, and you create an incredibly safe cash flow cushion for yourself.
And what does the literal perfect target look like on a day-to-day basis? Well, it's an undermanaged, unprofessionalized business. You do not want a business where the current owner is grinding out 80-hour weeks with flawless efficiency because there's just no room for you to add value. The absolute magical opportunity is finding a company that generates $2 million in profit while the owner plays golf twice a week and runs the whole shebang purely on gut instinct. That leaves massive, obvious room for you to step in, add professional, data-driven management, and scale it up.
Part 4, the jockey and fit.
All right, so you have a pristine track and a strong, cash-flowing horse. But here's the reality check of the acquisition process. If the third element, the human element, the entrepreneur, doesn't overlap, the deal is worthless. Operating a business is an intense, multi-year commitment. You have to ask yourself, are you comfortable working with a blue-collar workforce? Does the company culture actually fit your personality? Are you genuinely excited to lead this specific organization? Because if you aren't completely energized to be the jockey, it is not an actionable opportunity. Fit matters just as much as the financials.
Part 5, synthesizing your selection.
We have covered a tremendous amount of ground today. When you synthesize everything across the financial and operational dimensions of both the industry and the business, you get this massive checklist of desirable traits. Now, let's be real. It is highly unlikely that any single business on Earth is going to possess every single one of these positive traits. Your job as a prospective buyer is to absorb this framework and construct your own custom scoring system. You have to weigh what matters most to your specific operational style and, of course, your personal risk tolerance.
Which brings us to the end of this explainer. And I want to leave you with a bit of a challenge. As you begin searching for a business to acquire, you have got to separate the nice-to-haves from the absolute deal breakers. Are you willing to compromise on growth to get higher margins? Will you accept customer concentration if the contracts are multi-year? You really must define this before you even start looking. So I ask you, what are your non-negotiable economic characteristics? Define those, and you'll be well on your way to a completely life-changing acquisition.